I'm quite the warrior-minded guy. Okay, again, I'm a protector, things like that. So for me, sharpen the spear. We always, you take care of your gear takes care of you. You don't say a dull knife only cuts skin. You need quality tools, right? But I wanted to hold on to the warrior mindset because to me, battle is a business field. Business is a battlefield. It really is. So our tagline's honing entrepreneurial warriors on the battlefield of business.
This is the Chris Project, where we discuss mental wellness, self-awareness, and mindset with entrepreneurs and experts. Set your perceived ideas and biases aside, and let's go on our journey for yourself, for your family, for the world.
Welcome to another episode of The Chris Project. I am your host, Christian Brim. Joining me today is the esteemed Richard Walsh. Richard, welcome. Good to see you again.
You too, Chris. Great to be here.
Well, I know a little bit of your story, but why don't you introduce yourself to the audience who may not know you?
Love to, yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur for about 35 years. I was in the Marine Corps, came out of the Marine Corps, decided working for myself was a much better way of doing things than working for others. So I started doing that actually in a landscape format. That became custom water features, specialized in that. I ended up adding steel sculpture to that. That ended up kind of building a life of its own as well. I ended up doing some world-class exhibits. Things of that nature became internationally recognized. I was a boxer, a champion boxer. I was a black belt. I'm now a best-selling author. I'm a coach. I do business coaching now, Sharpen the Spear Coaching. And that is the tiniest little nutshell I can make.
You did condense it very well. I'm impressed. There's a lot to that onion, I know, from my previous interview with you on the Profitable Creative. So I would like to dig into some of the challenges and obstacles that you encountered as an entrepreneur. And I'll let you pick, what you want to share, but dealing with some of the mindset issues, the mental health issues, any of those struggles that you encountered.
Wow, that's how many hours do we have, Chris?
Well, we're only going to spend less than one, but
okay, I get it. I'll tell you, entrepreneurship in itself is a mental game of its own. I spent my first 20 years building that first water feature business, and then 0809 came and everything collapsed around me. I wasn't doing the right things in my business. So I ended up losing everything, losing my business, losing my home. I had 6 small kids at the time, 4 years and younger. My wife had to relocate. That was a little bit challenging.
You think?
That whole experience, yeah. So from a mental aspect, I'll tell you on that was, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to do what I did. So at least I had that for a starting point. I'm like, can't go back. I'm not going to go backwards. I'm not going to. I tried to save that business. It didn't work. Then I realized I didn't want to do that. Right? That's not what I want to do. It had become my identity, which is a really big thing, I think, for men especially. We become what we do. Right? And because what's the first question anyone asks you? What do you do?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? So it becomes who we are. And I realized it had really become who I was. Like without it, I didn't exist.
Yeah.
I won all the awards. I'm on the committees. I'm all this stuff out front, and I always had a shirt on, always had a hat on, right? And I realized I really came to that conclusion, like that obsession with myself, okay, caused a myriad of problems. Not only not asking for help because I was going to do it because I'm the man,
right?
But my kids also were watching me, even at their very young ages. I realized if I continue down this path of this is first, this is me, everything goes to this, no matter how many hours or whatever it is, right or wrong, I'm doing it. They were going to follow in my footsteps because more is caught than taught with kids.
Right.
And I knew if I continued, they're going to end up with broken marriages and failed relationships and struggles throughout everything, right? They might do good at business maybe, but everything else in their life was going to kind of be trashed. So that was the day I literally walked in and shut the business down. We were going to end anyways.
Let's dig into that because how old were you at the time?
39, 42, 43.
Okay. I would not have had the insight to see the ramification, and I didn't honestly have the insight to see how my behavior was affecting my children at that time as it related to the business. Like, how did you gain that clarity? What was it that triggered that for you?
To me, it was an epiphany one morning. I woke up and to me, it was like this window that God gave me to see the future. That's the only way I can explain it. It was because I'm not a panic guy. I'm actually unusually calm in emergency situations. Like really, oh, my arm fell off. Let me just get that and take it to the hospital, you know.
The Marine Corps does that to
yeah. So I was calm with that, but I started realizing like whatever that window was, that epiphany that came to me was I have to lead my family.
Mm.
You know, I mean, I have 6 kids who loved to see me when I came home, hated when I left, all this stuff. And so I'm thinking, they don't care what I drive. They don't care what kind of house you live in. They don't care how much money I make. All the stuff that I cared about, like, I'm not saying it's not important, but when you put it in perspective, like through a child's eyes, I wasn't giving them the one thing they wanted.
Is there something that made that clear for you, like with your children? I remember a story one of my pastors said a long time ago about his coming home, and he had made the commitment to play ball with his son, and he came home and his son was sleeping on the couch with the glove in his hand. And that was kind of like that moment that he was like, I screwed up. Like I did not do what I should have done.
Mine was my 4-year-old chasing my truck as I'm leaving in the driveway, crying because I'm leaving. And I'm looking at him in the rearview mirror where he's already small. But hey, it's business. I got to go. And I just watch him get smaller and smaller. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, those are gut check moments. Yeah. Definitely. When you experience, I often find the dynamic with the spouse interesting. At least it has been in my case. How did your wife react to that situation?
Losing everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, well, she has some hindsight. Okay. So they like to, it's, you know, it's, as I tell my kids, I'll say this for the record. I said, marriage is work and it's always work.
Yes.
Okay. It's never not work. So you're going to have, so she's telling me the things I should have done that I didn't do because, listen, I had billionaires telling me what I should do. I didn't listen to them. You think I'm going to listen to my wife?
No, you're not.
so I just get putting things in perspective.
She should know that. She should know that.
Yeah,
that's her.
She knows now. But I do listen now. I do listen. I go to her for counsel. So I learned my lesson. But she's like unbelievably tough. I mean, she has 6 children under 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And not afraid to take them out.
Right.
Got a 5-kid wagon, another kid on her hip, and she's at the botanic garden. Walking around, pulling around, doing something all the time, traveling across the country with them. Let's go here, let's go. We did a 40-day road trip with 6 little kids, you know, and like we did all that stuff because she's who she is. So she was really able to adapt and roll with it. Of course, she didn't like it.
No.
We went from basically high-end suburbia, you know, she's born and raised in Chicago, to the farm. So if you know Green Acres, we kind of went Green Acres on it, right? So it's a very...
Did you have a party line or did you have your own phone?
Tin cans and a string.
Yes. Okay.
So we get there and it's, you know, like I said, I loved it. I'm like, we had a neighbor a half mile one way and a half mile the other way. Nothing in front and behind. I'm like, this is awesome. This is like, you know, the kids can pee off the front porch. I'm like, this is freedom. I'm like, this is freedom. That's what it's like. We can shoot off the back and do that off the front. Okay. So, but we're there and she's like, she's an extrovert. I'm actually an introvert.
Right.
You know, so she's like, after about a year, she's like, there's no one here. I have no friends. I mean, she was really, really down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just not her normal self. And, you know, so I call it having a talk, right? I'm finally like, listen, you just got to suck it up. Like, this is where we're at. This is what we have to do. We're figuring it out. I know it's not the most fun, but let's get things rolling again. We'll get it. You can go to Chicago and see, you know, we're only an hour and a half away or whatever. And So it was really kind of there's another gut check there. I just had to be a little bit firm because I'm like, I can't change where we're at right now. It's a process, right? And if you've never been through the business building process, she came in where things were good.
Right.
Business established, all this stuff. Right? At that time, we've been married like 9 years, maybe. And so this is all new.
Right.
And I'm telling you, if you haven't been through it, it's not fun.
No. It gets back to those vows of better or worse, right?
That's right. A whole lot of worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we did it,
Right.
Started figuring things out and getting through stuff, and the kids are growing and doing that stuff. And she really focused on that. We ended up homeschooling our kids all the way through, so we had that. So it took a number of years, but then finally she was like, would never change it. This never go back. It was so great what it had become because of freedom for the children and everything else.
I think in my life, the things that I didn't want to go through, that I didn't like to go through, I wouldn't trade those experiences because they're formative. Not only are there blessings in those things that you wouldn't have known, but the change in yourself from those experiences, I look back and say, there's no way I could have gotten to be the person I am now if I hadn't gone through that. Like there's no shortcut.
Yeah, I agree. That 08-09 experience, never change it.
Right.
You talk about correcting. Okay, a huge corrective experience. That was it. That changed the whole trajectory of my life.
You pick up, you move on, and you start other businesses. How did that experience shape how you approach entrepreneurship and business now?
Because I realized I was doing everything in the business. Again, it was me. It was a lot of I. I did this, and I do this, and I do that. And it's kind of a theme.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a good sharer. So I decided I'm going to share now. I'm going to give a whole bunch of people a lot to do. My goal was really simple, Christian. I just said, if my wife calls me and says she needs me at home, I can be there in 15 minutes.
Right.
That was my goal.
Okay.
I don't want to say I'll see you at 5, I'll see you at 7. I got to work, I got to do this. That was my goal. So, kind of a broad picture, that's what it was. So how do I create a business like that? So I really focused on taking all the mistakes and failures that I had in my first business and let's not repeat them.
In your mind, what was the reason for that? Why did you have trouble sharing with others or delegating to others or relying on others, whatever that aspect was?
I had a tremendous ego. Tremendous. And I'm telling you, ego and pride, they're intertwined. It was all that. It was all going to be up to me. I'm going to do this. I'm the protector, the provider. I'm all these things, right? So I'm going to make sure it's me who does it. I will not share the credit with anyone else. Okay. Now, I didn't verbally say I won't share the credit, but that's the outcome, right? It was always about that. To me, I can't be wrong. It's my business. I mean, that was my mindset. I'll figure it out. Even if I'm wrong, I'll fix it.
I didn't share this with you before the show, but there's a interesting study that was done on male entrepreneurs, and they put them in MRIs and did brain scans while they showed them images. And the part of their brain that lit up when they showed them pictures of their business was the same part of their brain that lit up when they showed them pictures of their children. And I don't know what exactly you can take away from that, except that I think that personal identity thing, like if your kids were to screw up at school or misbehave in public or whatever, like that's a reflection on you as a person, as a parent, as a father. I think that's how that's intertwined with the business. And if something fails in the business, it really is you that's failed, as a person. And some of that's hardwired into our brains.
Yeah, I think you should submit that as the definition.
Yeah.
That's really well said. I really think you're 100% right on all that. Because it's hard to be an entrepreneur, start a business, grow a business, and not consider it's your baby. I birthed it.
Right.
I raised it through its infant stage. I want to get it to maturity. I want to turn it loose, and I want to be proud of its future accomplishments.
Yeah.
Even if I sell it, right? That's to letting them go, get their own apartment, move on with life, right? I want to be proud. My son now is in the Marine Corps. He's been in for a year. Just
Nice.
graduated at MSG school. He's going off to Garden Embassy, third hardest school in the Marine Corps, did all that. He's been a whole year of just he's home right now for 2 weeks, and then going to head out. But it's that, right? It's like, man, I went to that. Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps is handing him the cert and everything else. It's like, that's what it is. That's the feeling. The scan would be lighting up the same way.
Yes.
With my business.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's exactly it.
How did you name your coaching business?
I'm quite the warrior-minded guy. Okay. Again, I'm a protector, things like that. So for me, sharpen the spear, we always, you take care of your gear takes care of you. You don't say a dull knife only cuts skin. You need quality tools, right? But I wanted to hold on to the warrior mindset because to me, battle is a business field. The business is a battlefield. It really is. So our tagline's honing entrepreneurial warriors on the battlefield of business.
Do you work exclusively with men?
No, I work with women.
No. Okay. Do you tend to work with men more?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously, things resonate. As a coach, not every coach is good for every client.
Sure.
I have fired coaches. I've fired clients. Clients have fired me. Right? We get it. Right? I always use the example like you get a head football coach for the NFL, goes to the Bears and has 2 or 3 terrible seasons, can't win nothing. They trade him. He goes to whatever other team, and 2 years later he's winning the Super Bowl.
Green Bay, of course. If he was at the Bears, he went to Green Bay.
That's right. He has to. And then they go to the Super Bowl. And everyone's going, well, how can he was the worst coach ever? No, it wasn't that. It was a team. It was a mindset. It was a philosophy of that team that he didn't jive with. Right. He couldn't connect right, but he could go to that place and he could thrive. Because nobody is a head coach for an NFL team and not know what they're doing. You just don't, you're not randomly picked off the street. Okay. So you're pretty much, what you're doing. You got to that place, but now it's about working with the team. So I think that's the best comparison I can use.
When you said sharpen the spear, it reminded me, and again, this is just completely off the wall. Did you see the movie, it's probably 20 years old, Tip of the Spear?
Yes.
About the missionary down in South America?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Great movie. Great.
Yeah, but that's just it. And Tip of the Spear, sharpen the spear, same principle, right? Because we're out front, we're in battle, and spears, a lot of times were not thrown. They were used up close and personal. I have one that I can't pronounce the African name of the actual spear I have. That's the logo for my company, but it has this name, and they say the name, it was named that way because of the sound it makes when they run it through someone.
Nice.
Okay. So I'm like, okay, that's going to be my spear.
Yeah.
So that's how it's a really cool, but it's got a shorter handle. It's maybe 3.5 feet long plus a 12-inch blade. But you see that and like the Spartan, same thing.
Yeah.
They why do you have such short spears? Because we like to be up close and personal. We want to be in it. So I think of it that way.
The Chris Project is sponsored by the Rupp Group Coaching and Consulting. If you are interested in implementing some of these suggestions that you've been hearing about, or in general, you feel like there's parts of your mental game or actually your implementation strategy that you feel is lacking, and you love the opportunity to actually start to build yourself into the person that can create the success that you're looking for, please reach out vis-a-vis the link in the show notes to grab a free consultation with us to see if we can help elevate your mental or your business game. Thank you very much.
As male entrepreneurs, I think we do resonate with the idea of business being battle. I oftentimes tell my wife as I'm leaving, I'll say, I'm going to go slay dragons. Because that resonates with me and it makes sense. I find a lot of times, though, that's hard to translate back into the family. Like setting that spear and shield down and being, I don't want to say a different person, but a different role. How do you approach that?
I think, and this is not my term, and it's being the warrior poet. That's what you're describing. How are you
Yeah.
the warrior poet? Which means I read great books. I know poetry.
Yes.
I'm a romantic. I
Yes.
do romantic things with my wife and men. We climb
Yes.
mountains together. We go to
Right.
battle together, right? We train together. That's, to me, that's romance. We cook. We enjoy, great music, stuff like that. That's romance in the classical sense, right? So it's that warrior poet, I believe, is the best description of it. You got to have both.
More like David.
Yes. That is the king warrior. He's a favorite of mine.
Yes.
Put it that way for sure.
A man after God's own heart.
That's it. I mean, there's big sinner, big repenter, right?
Yes.
I mean, that
Yes.
man, adultery, murder, he did it all. He checked all the boxes. You know what I mean? And still, the redemption.
No, he's a crazy character. When you start looking at, it's almost like when I was learning about the Christian faith, that David's fall was really kind of minimized. It's more of like he is the triumphant king and, unified Israel and all these other things. And, but to me, that's the beauty of it, is that like through all of that, he still was a man after God's own heart. Like, and part of that was the screwing up and the repentance, like, knowing that I screwed up and admitting it and just falling on the mercy of God. Not to say he didn't suffer consequences. He absolutely suffered consequences for it, right? But it still was his heart that he repented.
Most people don't know, they know him as the warrior king.
Right.
Right. But until you spend time in the word and really read about it, that's when you get the full story.
Right.
It's all cool on the little cartoons and the little whatever, and to talk about it real quick on stage. But when you dig into it, I mean, everything with Absalom, his son, and it's an incredible story, right? I mean, it's movie worthy. Never been made a movie, I don't think. So, but and it could be a sequel one. We were talking about The Godfather earlier, so I think it could be a multi-series. But it's so amazing when you see that, because you understand the relationship between man and God. And how he creates that. He had a relationship.
Right.
Repentance was such a big thing because he understood. When people talk about you need a fear of God, it's not a fear of like, because he's going to be angry and he's going to punish me. It's the separation. It's fear of being separated from God. That's what the fear of God is. And David understood that. And when you read the Psalms, listen, he's whining, right? It begins with him, so-and-so's after me, this guy, this, that, and then, but you're here, Lord. You're this, you're this, and you're here, and I have everything in you. And it's like total faith, right? Because the only thing that pleases God is faith. And so you see the faith of David with the 600 guys. 3 times he could have taken out, oh man, what is his name slipping right now?
Not Solomon. What was this? It was started with an S, though.
The first king.
Yeah.
I can't think of it right now.
I can't remember it either.
This is terrible. Stop the show. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll remember it after the show's over.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Anyways, but that whole thing, right? Like he didn't remove God's anointed. They had that wherewithal. You talk about like me, like that one point when like it's your kids and this whole thing, but he had that, right? He had that understanding, and that is hard to grasp. Here's a man who's trying to kill you multiple times. You have him right there, and you're just cutting off part of his cape, and while he's taking care of business, and then the spear of the head with the water jugs, and then the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like that's some incredible restraint for one, but also an understanding that's almost unfathomable.
Yeah,
because it's God's anointed.
We were talking about The Godfather, and I think, stick with me here, because I think this is an interesting contrast, because I think one of the things that really intrigued me about The Godfather, about that dynamic, was his idea of manliness and manhood and head of the family, right? And it always captivated me. It still does, like this. But at the end of the day, Michael only would rely on himself, right? And that was his failing. It was not his devotion. It wasn't his abilities. It was his self-reliance, and that was his fatal flaw.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what I learned after that collapse in 08, 09, everything else. And I really discovered the Lord and started looking at this going, yeah, this isn't me. I'm only here because of him.
Right.
Right. Like all the dumb things I did, if I really, if I go chronological in my life, I'm like, well, there's only providence is the only reason.
Right.
Because I'm meant for something else, I mean, he knew me before he formed me, right? I was born for a time such as this. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I get where I'm supposed to be. I get what I'm supposed to do. And it's really important that I fulfill this, and start understanding who I'm truly serving. So that was the big thing.
So do you incorporate spirituality into your coaching?
Here's how I do it. So I adhere to biblical principles,
Mm-hmm.
okay, because they work, whether
Right.
you're a believer or not. So I can't go wrong if I do that, right? They're going to work wherever they are.
Right.
Now, I'm not telling people what they should believe or anything else, but if they're a believer, we ramp it up.
Right.
So it becomes even more intense. If they're not, but then they're questioning, I bring them along. People know where I stand, and that's all good. And they can be where they're at. I want to help them. And, I witness by the way I live, Christian. That's how I witness.
I think that we as men, through our vocation through what we do, actually there is a spiritual calling to it. I kind of base it on this understanding of the curse of Adam. Like, you're going to have to work. The ground's going to work against you, and you're going to have to work. That's your curse. But it's not about the curse. It's not about the work, although we focus on that. It's actually our calling and our reason for being here. It's not the reason God made us. That's not that's the eternal thing. But as we're here on this earth, working out God's plan through our work. And until you get that alignment, there's a lot of hollowness in what you're doing, because you can achieve, great things. And I've seen a lot of people get to that point of whatever they determine success to be, and they're sitting around going, well, there's got to be something else. It's was it Alexander the Great when they said he wept because there were no more worlds to conquer? I mean, like you get to the top and it's like, what now?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I go back to the work thing, because God put Adam on the earth. And what was his command? Work, tend the garden. This is when there were no weeds.
Right.
This is when it was literally like it's a good time.
Right.
It's the first thing we were given to do was work. I mean, working is part of who we are and what we should do.
Right.
So for me and from men especially, we're providers, we're protectors. We should be the priest of our family as well, right? So there's a lot of responsibilities in that aspect when you look at it and what we need to provide for our families. When I'm a priest, I have to introduce them to the Lord. No one else. Me, yeah, I agree. We got pastors, we go to a great church, we do all the cool stuff, but that's on me. That's my responsibility. Adam dropped the ball from a responsibility standpoint when he let Eve be tempted by Satan to take the fruit. He was standing next to her.
Yes.
And this thing could look like a koala bear. I have no idea, chatting her up, chatting his wife up, getting her to do what he stood there.
Yes.
So told you, so it's his fault. That's where we're at, right? We have to have the responsibility to take the role that we've been given, we're born into. So it's very important.
I've been thinking about this a lot recently, that who we are as men has been very muddled in our culture over the last 50, 60 years, my lifetime anyway. You look back, like I told you, I was reading The Godfather, right? And I'm reading this book, and the dynamic between men and women was very different than it is now, right? And so I'm not speaking on one being right or wrong. I'm just saying that it changed, right? It's changed significantly. And it's hard for men, I think, to know really what their job is, what their role is. Who are they supposed to be? It's very confusing in today's culture.
Yeah, I think because, the biggest epidemic in this country is fatherlessness. Okay, the father not being present, the father not being in the home, the single mothers, everything else. And that's why they're so confused. And that's why these kids are so angry. And that's why they're listless. Okay, because they don't have purpose. They don't have a role model. They have nothing to gauge. Inside, they know it's in their DNA and what to do.
Yes.
They know what they're supposed to do. And yes, then now society beats that down as well. Oh, you're just too much energy, too much this, too much. It takes it all away, sucks the life out of them. Now do that in a public school setting, just using that for an example, and then add it to no man in the family, right? No man in their life. And that just starts to compound. And that's why you see kids murdering each other at 11, 12 years old, 13 years old, committing crimes, doing all this stuff. It's terrible.
Well, and I'd say that the disease is beyond those extreme cases of fatherlessness to the ones that, do have fathers, because I think back about my own experience, and it was very important to me. My wife and I got baptized before we got married, about a month before we got married, and we had our whole family in church from birth, right? Even though that wasn't our experience, but neither one of us had that experience growing up, but that was what we wanted for our family. And because of my father as a role model and his father as a role model, I really struggled with understanding what my role was. This was all new to me, right? And the mistakes I made and the damage I did to my wife and to my children, even though I was trying. I had the what was it? I had good intentions, right? I didn't know. I didn't have that model to follow, and had to figure out a lot of that on my own. And this may, some people may listen to this and say, "Oh my God, that's misogynist. You're a knuckle dragger." I have been called those things, but to me, what you're saying is very true. Like, a lot of the problems in our society come from men not just not being fathers, but not being men. And I acted like an adult child for a long time, right? And that's where a lot of men end up, is they're perpetually stuck at 13 or 14, acting that way rather than being the man they were made to be.
Right. It's called extended adolescence.
Yes, that's what I had.
Okay, that's it. You're 30. You're playing video games with all your buddies online and doing this for hours on end at night, and the whole thing. I get it for sure. I'm in the same boat as you. So my dad worked an extreme amount. Right, 3 jobs when I was little. They became a golfer. They worked all the time. My mom was at home. And I realized, again, more is caught than taught. What did I do?
Mm-hmm.
Worked all the time. Work was it. Work. I remember being in my dad's office at the golf course, and behind him on the wall was just awards and plaques and all this cool stuff, because he was really great at what he did. And he started as a guy washing golf carts.
Right.
And works his way up. He had a kid when he was 19, and another kid, that whole thing. So outside of all that, he was doing all that. So my decision as a father, first as a husband, then as a father, was not to repeat those things, right? I had to do things differently, so that's why, again, at that 4-year stage with 6 kids, I'm like, that was part of the epiphany too. Like, okay, well, I'm going down the same road.
Yes.
This will be it. So I think that was all part of it. So, but yeah, then we had to learn, well, what does it actually mean?
Right.
What does it actually mean? Like, yeah, I'm a tough dude. I'm a Marine. I'm a boxer. I'm a black belt. I'll pretty much take out anybody,
right.
And enjoy it. But,
right.
But what does that really mean? How does that translate into protecting your family? Protecting isn't just a physical or that. It's literally like the surroundings. You have to protect everybody. Who Who are they exposed to? Where do we live? Where do we go to church? What activities do we do? What am I actually teaching my children? That's protection.
Yes.
Okay. That's how you protect your children. We give them a biblical worldview. I give them, but we're critical thinkers. Because a lot of people think you're just these things stuck in a house, you never go out. And my kids are more socialized than anybody. Okay. They've been across the planet pretty much. All right. So they can do all this stuff. But really, what are they being exposed to? How do they analyze this? How do they actually have critical thought? Right. So they can understand this and explain what they believe and share this kind of stuff. So that's protection. That's actually protecting my children. So it took me a while to figure that out, Christian. But when I did, I'm like, okay, this is, people like, if TV was on, a commercial would come on, right? And so we'd watch the commercial and it's whatever, 30 seconds a minute. And I go, now, so let's talk about this commercial. Okay. Like, What's the actual agenda? Why do they want to save the planet? Why do they say this? And why do they say that? Is that true? And I make them walk through it.
Right.
So I'm that obnoxious dad who only cares about the commercials. Okay. But it was really good because it's an exercise. It makes them think. They don't turn off when those things come on and just absorb it. They actually get to question it. So when someone's advertising something, they now question it. What are they really selling? That kind of thing. So it's a little off, but yeah.
That's a very important wisdom that you have passed on to them, because most people, they're passive about their lives. Entrepreneurs generally are not passive. They are people that want to make changes. And I think, having that, being an entrepreneur is a heavy responsibility in that regard, because you are called to see things as they could be, not as they are. And leading people to fulfill that vision of changing things for the good is a huge responsibility. And if you're thinking that it's just about, my success, my accolades, my money, whatever measure you're using to measure success, you're missing the point. Like, to your point, you've got to get your ego out of the way.
Yeah, 100%. I think because people ask me, I've been on a lot of podcasts, right? That's one being yours. But they'll ask you, like, what's your legacy, right? What kind of legacy you want to leave? I'm like, well, it's not business. I'm like, oh, my business is great and all that stuff. Mine are my children. That's my legacy, and it has to live on for multiple generations. Like what I teach, what I've shared with them, how I've taught them how to think and examine things, how to behave, all that stuff has to get, so it's not just what they do, but what they will teach their children.
Yes.
It has to be in that kind
What's
of
really
thing.
ingrained in them, not just something they believe because someone told them to.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's my walk. You can tell your kids all the right things, but if you're not congruent with your walk, all they're going to do is how you walk. That's what they're going to imitate. They're not going to imitate what you say. They'll only imitate what you do. Guaranteed.
Was it St. Francis of Assisi that said, spread the gospel, use words if necessary? I think it was, I don't know.
I talk to that a lot. I have a pastor at church, older gentleman, pretty old now, and it's always about, and I'm like, dude, we have to, because I had we have a men's group, right, and all that stuff. I was the head of that for a while. I have a Bible study and things, but I'm like, we're all messed up.
Yes.
Every one of us is messed up to a degree. I said, but we're really messed up. A lot of guys are really messed up. Like, let's fix these guys here. Let's go deep with these guys. Let's fix these guys so they can be the example, so they can walk the example, because they can go out and tell everyone about Jesus.
Right.
And then go to the club and then hang out and do this and sleep with these 3 girls and they're not winning souls. Okay. But when they're walking the walk, they will win souls. They don't have to speak, like you're saying. Right. So that was always my goal. Oh, we need to grow this, get all these people. I'm like, why? I said, we focus on depth. God will handle the breadth. Let's go deep.
Narrow is the path.
That's the gate. That's right. That's right. So, but sometimes you got to reset some people. I'm like, you get caught up in the world, the marketing methods and everything else. This isn't, as some friends of mine, the Ben always say, church isn't a bounce house. It's a boot camp. Okay.
Bounce
It's like
house,
we're not here. It's not Sunday fun day.
Yeah.
Okay. We're here for legit reasons. Okay.
Right.
Go deep in the word, all the word of God. We want to share the complete truth. Some of it's going to hurt, but that's what we're here for. So we can go out and, continue or, stay straight and whatever. But it's a big responsibility, Christian, when you look at it, fatherhood, manhood, right? All this stuff. My men's Bible study, which is actually tonight, is called, I named it Remnant, just for the reason, because we're not going to be the biggest. No. Okay. But it's going to be guys, and we're doing amazing things with a few people. We're changing each other's lives. We're helping guys who need the real help, like with the marriage, with the family, that we have different ages and wisdom. And when you bring believers together like that, things change. It's amazing. I mean, I can share stories. It's so cool. And there's like 5 of us now and 6 of us and 7 and whatever, but there's so much power in that. Sure. Because again, we're shoring each other up to walk that walk, to be protectors. I mean, guys come to my house, we shoot, we wrestle, we do the whole, we are the warrior poets. That's what we do. We kind of run the security team, but we're that, right? But we're just God-fearing men who want to walk that walk, love our wives, love our children, give them the best that they can have, understand and have that relationship with God. And that's an incredibly big calling, and be an entrepreneur and run a successful business and scale that and coach a bunch of people in their business, so but that's what makes it great. Those are the great things. And like you said about vision, it's Habakkuk 2:2. Write the vision plain on tablets so man can take it and run. People can be able to run with it. The vision doesn't have to be complicated, but there has to be vision. Like you were saying, you got to know where all this stuff is going, why you're actually doing this, no matter what.
Wise counsel. And I would love to have you back on, and we could go into even more depth on some of these topics. Maybe you and I will have a virtual coffee and have that conversation. But thank you very much for your wisdom, insight, and candor. Tell people how to find you if they want to learn more about End of the Spear. No, it's not Sharpen the Spear.
That's right. I'll get you at the end of the spear. It's going to be Sharpen the Spear. SharpenTheSpearCoaching.com. Best place to go. A lot of great stuff on the website. Reach out to me. SharpenTheSpearCoaching.com. We'll keep it simple.
Thank you again, Richard. Listeners, if you like what you heard, please rate the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. If you don't like what you hear, let me know and I'll replace Richard. Maybe me. I don't know. Until then, ta-ta for now.
Thank you for listening to The Chris Project. You are important. Your work is important. Do not give up.